to another episode of Belongs to the Shadows. I'm your host, Jamie Bennett, and I'm on location near Savannah, Georgia at the Bonaventure Cemetery in Thunderbolt, Georgia. Let me tell you, this place is totally worth walking and seeing all the history. And despite rumors, there is not a Grim Reaper statue here, but this was the location of the movie that was done by Clint Eastwood in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. There is the bird feeding girl statue, but it is no longer located in the cemetery because of vandalism. They have it in a museum downtown. It's very neat to see this place. It's well worth traveling to see this place, and the air is very smooth and peppery. I love it here. The sights and sounds here in Bonaventure Cemetery are absolutely breathtaking. And if you can't hear it, it's very windy, so it kind of adds to the sights and sounds, especially since this is a supernatural show. So it makes it even more supernatural hearing the natural wind in the background. But I am going to go ahead and show you all a little bit of Bonaventure Cemetery. The next story that I'm going to be talking about is of Corinne Elliott Lawton. She is located in Bonaventure Cemetery, as well as her dad is located in Bonaventure Cemetery. She is the eldest daughter of Confederate Brigadier General Alexander R. Lawton. And like I said, his own monument stands in the background of Bonaventure Cemetery, overlooking the river. His monument features a life-size sculpture of Jesus Christ at Heaven's Gate, and you can see his monument from his daughter's headstone, or her monument. Corinne died on January 24th of 1877 from most likely pneumonia. She was sick in her bed for up to 6 days, and according to her mother's diary entry, stories of her supposed demise were pure fiction and are pure fiction. She was surrounded by a lot of her beloved family members at the time of her death. There are overly dramatic tour guides that sometimes spread disrespectful falsehoods of Corinne's death. The sculptor of Corinne was from a place called Palmiro, Sicily, and he created the sculpture in his studio in 1879. He created this sculpture of Corinne from photographs and recollections of the bereaved parents. He modeled the figure in which the parents acknowledged to be a very remarkable likeness. The artist represents her sitting at the foot of the cross with a crown of flowers at her feet. She looks up to the heavens with a sad, resigned expression. An article once said that was located in the Harper's Monthly of June 1881 that her epitaph reads, "Allured to brighter worlds and led the way." This the sculpture of Corinne is absolutely remarkable, as you can see in the photos that I have included. Um, Although Corinne is now located in Bonaventure Cemetery, her first resting place was Laurel Grove Cemetery. She was re-interred at Bonaventure Cemetery on the Bluff at the time that there was no other monuments that had existed in the family plot. Her father's monument didn't come until many years later, after he died in 1896. Old pictures reveal the family plot was sectioned off in 4 squares with a path separating each. Some tour guides will dramatize, but there is no symbolic meaning whatsoever of Corinne having her back to Heaven's Gate, her father's monument. It didn't even exist when she was entered into Bonaventure Cemetery. It just happens to be an installation of his monument, close to her monument. There's no meaning to read into it. What draws people to Corinne is the beauty of her lifelike sculpture, and it is a remarkable sculpture. If any of you ever get a chance to visit Bonaventure Cemetery in Savannah, I highly suggest you do so. There's a powerful sadness that's depicted within her sculpture and a reflection of deep mourning from a very happy and close-knit family. The fallen crown of flowers from the outstretched hands, the upward-looking eyes, and the kneeling below the cross. This monument is frozen in time. Corinne and her father, Alexander, were lovers of the arts. They traveled internationally to follow and partake in the arts. So yeah, there is a lot of sculptures like this in the cemetery. It's like you step back in time. It's like time is completely frozen there. And, like I said in the beginning of this, there is many, many stories for this cemetery to tell. There's a lot of history here, and the history is deeply rooted into the ground. You can feel it when you go in there. One of the ghost stories that comes out of Bonaventure Cemetery is the story of Gracie Watson. She was born in 1883 to W.J. and Frances Watson. The Watson family was originally from Boston, Massachusetts, and they made their way to Savannah after W.J. was hired to manage the Pulaski Hotel. It was a luxurious hotel which was located at the corner of Bull Street and Bryan Street. It was one of the best hotels in all of the South. He was managing the hotel, which was considered a prestigious position at the time. While working at the hotel, his daughter, Gracie Watson, became quite the center of attention. This little bright-eyed girl warmed the hearts and brought many smiles to many faces of the visitors to the Pulaski Hotel. It is said that she would put on little shows for the guests, dancing in the lobby and singing songs. Any of us with young children could certainly relate to this. In 1889, just 2 days before Easter, little Gracie Watson would pass on. She had suffered from pneumonia, and her little body couldn't take any more. Savannah, of course, was heartbroken. Her parents were far beyond devastated. Her father fell into a deep depression after her death. She was laid to rest on the Watson family plot in Bonaventure Cemetery. As a tribute to this beautiful little girl, Gracie's father had sculptor John Waltz carve a monument to his little girl. Using a photograph as reference, John Waltz had sculpted the monument, which now sits upon little Gracie's gravesite out at Bonaventure Cemetery. It is said to be life-size and a picture-perfect representation of little Gracie Watson. This hauntingly beautiful monument of little Gracie Watson has captivated many of the visitors to her gravesite, and it has captivated them for over 100 years. The most heartbreaking part of little Gracie's story is here all alone after her death. Her father quit his job managing the Pulaski Hotel. He had taken a job working at the DeSoto Hotel. However, that didn't last too long, and eventually he and his wife moved back to New England, leaving Gracie all alone in Savannah. After her parents' deaths, they were buried in New England. That is part of the reason why little Gracie's gravesite is such a popular place to visit in Bonaventure Cemetery. The human part of us wants to comfort this little girl and to keep her company, even after she has been gone for this amount of time. It's sad that she was buried over 1,000 miles from her family, and only her family would know. Even after Gracie's death, she remains the ambassador for Savannah, Georgia. It seems that the little spirit of little Gracie Watson is still around. Many people have reported seeing the ghost of little Gracie Watson, or a ghost of a little girl, in Johnson Square, the square that the Pulaski Hotel was built upon. Some of the people who have seen this little girl ghost have said they believe the ghost to be a real girl. She's wearing a pretty white dress, running around Johnson Square, just as you would imagine any child to do, until she disappears into thin air. I personally did not see the ghost of Gracie Watson, but that might be because I wasn't there when it was nighttime and quiet. It's said that if you were to remove any of the trinkets or toys that people, or even flowers that people leave for Gracie Watson, that she will cry tears of blood. Another person that is buried in Bonaventure Cemetery is the singer, songwriter, lyricist that was born in Savannah, Georgia, by the name of Johnny Mercer. If you don't know who Johnny Mercer is, I will tell you who Johnny Mercer is. He was born in Savannah, Georgia, and he had attended the prep school Woodbury Forest in Virginia. But in 1927, his family bankruptcy ended his college plans. He joined an amateur theater troupe, which placed first in an Amsterdam roof theater competition. That year in New York, he published his first lyric, Out of Breath and Sacred Death of You, for a popular stage review, the Garrick Gaieties, in 1932. He had won the Pontiac Youth of America contest and had appeared on bandleader Paul Whitman's craft radio program. He went on to sing the lead, write new songs for the band, and then see their shows. Soon after, he had met Hoagy Carmichael, with whom he collaborated for Lazy Bones, which he recorded with the Whitman Orchestra on lead vocals. It became the first of many hits for the pair in 1933. He moved to Hollywood, and then he wrote I Am an Old Cowhand for a feature film by the name of Rhythm on the Range. That was in 1936, in which he had also appeared, but for which he received no screen credit. Man, I did not know that. That is interesting. It did, however, lead to a Warner Brothers contract in 1938 and 1939. He had sang with the Benny Goodman Orchestra. Ooh, I better get that right. I'm a jazz musician. I better get that name right. Benny Goodman Orchestra, there you go. And also scored with the songs Hooray for Hollywood for the movie Hollywood Hotel in 1937. Here's something that you probably will know him for. Jeepers creepers, where'd you get those peepers? Yes, he was responsible for the song Jeepers Creepers in Going Places of 1938. You must have been a beautiful baby in the hard-to-get film 1938, That Old Black Magic in Star Spangled Rhythm in 1942, and I cannot even pronounce this, Accentuate the Positive. I probably butchered that. And Here Come the Waves in 1944. Other songs followed in his career, including such standards as Blues in the Night, One for My Baby, Come Rain or Come Shine, Autumn Leaves, Tangerine, and On the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe. See, I'm butchering these names, which had won him his first Academy Award in the 1940s. He had hosted his own radio show called Johnny Mercer's Music Shop. And in 1942, he get this, co-founded Capitol Records in 1951 in the cool of the evening from the film Here Comes the Groom. Won him his second Academy Award in 1954. He wrote the lyrics for Gene D. Paul's music in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers in 1961. He collaborated with Henry Mancini on Moon River, one of my personal favorites, for the film Breakfast at Tiffany's. Imagine that. Isn't that awesome? That is so awesome. That won him his third Academy Award. The pair repeated their achievement the following year with Days of Wine and Roses, and when he became the first lyricist to win 4 Oscars. Count them on your hand. 4 Oscars. He also contributed to the film scores for Charade in 1963, The Pink Panther in 1963, The Great Race in 1965, Barefoot in the Park in 1967, and Darlin' Lily in 1970. He then traveled to London in order to work with Andre Previn on the score for The Good Companions, which at Her Majesty's Theatre in London in July of 1974. Wow, what a illustrious career. I am not done yet. It was to be his last show. A series of severe headaches led to a diagnosis of a brain tumor, and he had died at age 66 due to complications following brain surgery. He is credited with writing or co-writing more than 1,500 songs over his career. And in 1996, the United States Postal Service issued an American commemorative series stamp in his honor. He has a star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame at 1628 Vine Street. In case you're ever there, look him up. He was the great-great-great-grandson of Revolutionary War Continental, there we go, I got it. Continental Army General Hugh Mercer, who was mortally wounded at the 1777 Battle of Princeton. That is amazing. Johnny Mercer has had an illustrious career, and I got the privilege and honor of paying his gravesite respect. It is beautifully located in Bonaventure Cemetery. And like I said before, if you guys get a chance to go to Savannah, Georgia, it's located in a town near Savannah, Georgia called Thunderbolt, Georgia, which is not too far from Savannah. And it's absolutely stunning. You need to visit the cemetery. I cannot say that enough. Bonaventure Cemetery is one of my favorite places that I have ever visited. I've told you a few of the ghost stories from Bonaventure Cemetery. Well, at least the ghost story of Gracie Watson. Bonaventure Cemetery has been considered one of the most haunted places in America, and You know, Savannah is haunted. It is rich in history, and it is one of the most haunted places in the United States. And it's not just Savannah itself. Bonaventure Cemetery has taken the title as being one of the most haunted places in the United States. It is located along the Wilmington River, and it's called the Bonaventure Cemetery. It has gorgeous magnolia dogwood and live oaks and colorful azaleas and interesting tombstones. Like I have said throughout this whole thing, it is rich in history. Its history runs deep, and it's no wonder that the cemetery is haunted. There have been several ghost enthusiasts that have been to the cemetery. There have been YouTubers that have been to the cemetery. One of my favorite YouTubers actually visited the cemetery, and I think that is completely fascinating. The saddest story I think that comes out of the cemetery is of Gracie Watson, and she was only 6 years old when she died. That's really, really sad. I could not imagine that, and I wouldn't want to imagine that. Her parents were completely devastated, and it's awful. It's completely awful. Um, like I said, the cemetery is haunted, and I didn't have any ghost sightings, and I didn't have, anything weird to happen while I was there, but it was heavily populated. There were a lot of visitors, a lot of tours going on, and it was during the daytime. And in my experience, I think that spirits more likely are going to come out at night. But there have been several guests that have had accounts of some of the sculptures. There are a lot of angel sculptures in the cemetery, and there are sculptures of, like, not full trees, but like tree stumps. And we were told that is because it is a life unfinished. So it's usually a child who has the tree stump statues or headstones or monuments. And if you look at Gracie's monument or statue or sculpture, whatever you want to call it, it's a beautiful work of art. There, she has her hand rested upon a tree stump. So that's a life unfinished. Like I said, a lot of the guests have said that, some of the statues or sculptures they've seen them grimacing at them or smiling at them while they stood in front of the sculptures. The cemetery is not without spooky or inexplicable sounds. People have heard babies crying near an infant's grave. There are quite a few, sad to say, infant graves in Bonaventure Cemetery. I didn't take too many photos of those because, it's really sad, and I wanted to be as respectful as I possibly could be while doing this episode. Doing any episode of my show, actually, I always show respect toward the deceased. But they said that they have heard babies crying near infants' graves, they've heard children giggling, and the most disturbing sound is a pack of dogs snarling and barking angrily. There was one person that said that's probably the hellhounds. And there is a dog statue or a statue of a wolf located in the cemetery somewhere. I've heard. I didn't actually see it, but we didn't go around the cemetery very much. There are so many stories that I could tell you about Bonaventure Cemetery, and that would make this episode probably 2 or 3 hours long. So let's keep it short, keep it interesting, and keep you wanting more, as I always say. One of the most famous sculptures in Bonaventure Cemetery, and it is absolutely breathtaking. I know I've said that a lot in this episode, but I truly 100% mean it. I am a lover of sculptures. I am a lover of Southern Gothic cemeteries, Gothic cemeteries. I mean, I wouldn't be doing this show if I did not love cemeteries. I just find them completely peaceful. I love the sculptures in cemetery, and it's just so relaxing and peaceful in cemeteries. You might consider me to be weird, but it's the truth. I've always loved cemeteries because I've always found a moment of peace there. I have found serenity in cemeteries. It's a very peaceful place to be. But like I said, one of the most popular sculptures in Bonaventure Cemetery, and I was honored to get to see it, was the Baldwin Angel sculpture. And it has a doppelganger. It has a look-alike. A doppelganger is a German word that translates to double goer. So, yeah, it has a doppelganger. There are two gravestone sculpture doppelgangers that can be found in two different cemeteries in Savannah, Georgia. It is magnificent white marble. It's a magnificent white marble angel that marks the Baldwin family plot. The sculpture is one of the most beautiful, and it is one of the most visited monuments in the Bonaventure Cemetery. Um, I thought that I had recognized it, and the reason why I thought I had recognized it is because uh, it's very popular, and of course, this Bonaventure Cemetery has been made popular and famous by John Burundent's novel. I hope I didn't butcher his name. That would be awful. But the person who wrote Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and I had mentioned that at the very, very beginning of this episode, when I was telling you guys about the Bird Girl statue. I was disappointed that I didn't get to see the Bird Girl statue, but I totally understand that they moved it to a museum downtown because it became popular and there was a lot of people vandalizing it, and that's really sad. But this sculpture that I'm talking about that is very popular as well, like I said, it's called the Baldwin Angel, and it is a young angel that holds a shell, and tradition says that it remains of Saint James, one of the 12 apostles, who was sometimes referred to as James the Greater. We're taken to the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela in Galicia. Man, I'm butchering these names, and I apologize for that, which is in the north of Spain. St. James became the patron saint of Spain during the reconquest of the country from the Moors, and the Cathedral Santiago de Compostela became a popular site for Christian pilgrims. Galicia, noted for delicious seafood, including scallops, drew thousands of Christian pilgrims who offered to carry scallop shells back with them as a souvenir of the trip. Before long, the seashell became a symbol of the Christian pilgrimage and baptism. So the angel wears a loose gown with a belt of ivy wrapped around her waist or their waist. Ivy is a symbol that is associated with immortality and fidelity. Right next to the Bonaventure Cemetery, separated by only a chain link fence, is the Forest Lawn Memorial Garden. And when you walk through that cemetery, you come to the gates of yet another cemetery, the Greenwich Cemetery. And that cemetery is near a replica of the Baldwin Angel, except for this one does not have wings. She also holds a large seashell, same loose-fitting gown, and ivy belt. Only this sculpture is quite discolored and does not have the half-circle white marble backdrop. The two sculptures could be siblings for sure, but if not even twins. Though the wingless doppelganger in the Greenwich Cemetery has not been identified as having been sculpted by Henry Heering, who sculpted the Baldwin angel, the similarities are very striking, and people believe that both statues were his creations. The Baldwin angel is absolutely stunning. It captured it captured me. Like, I stood there for a good long while because I mean, it absolutely is stunning, a remarkable piece of work. And like I said, I love sculptures. That's why I love to go and take photos in cemeteries, because you're going to find some remarkable pieces of artwork in cemeteries. I'm an artist, I am a lover of art, and so go figure. I'm going to take tons and tons of photos whenever I'm in a cemetery, especially one such as Bonaventure. I really hope that I get another chance to visit Bonaventure and have more time there. My time was kind of cut short because we had to leave town. We were trying to get to the beach for my daughter. And we were just kind of rushed, and I didn't get to spend as much time as I wish I could have spent there. But the time that I did spend there was remarkable. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Belongs to the Shadows, on location in Thunderbolt, Georgia, near Savannah, Georgia, at Bonaventure Cemetery. Stay spooky. Love, hugs, and blessings.